Welcome to the Lingomaniac lessons, a corner for language learning and usage means, tips and tricks. The Lingomaniac lessons, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Jelena and I'm a master philologist and I've been a teacher and a translator for almost 20 years. I've been teaching English, Serbian, Spanish and French, and I've been doing translations in all of these languages, plus additionally in Italian. Today we will be talking about the largest group of words in English language, and those are nouns. We will be talking about the division of nouns because that division helps us use those words in the later usage of English. The first division that we can actually use as a general division is into proper nouns and common nouns. Now, proper nouns, as the name itself says, represents the group of words which are proper or individual names used to describe certain items, things, or people. All of the, for example, names, last names, nicknames go into this category. Take Jonathan Smith, known as Johnny or John. The second thing, which also falls in this category, are the names of all the geographical, items. So all the names for countries, continents, rivers, mountains, lakes, you name it, it's in this category because it's a personal name of a certain geographical item. And that's where I usually get a question. Also, in comparison to this and the following group of words which fall into these categories and which are so-called unique names. So basically names, individual proper names for unique objects that exist in the world. Like, for example, Eiffel Tower, Big Ben, or, majority of the ladies will immediately know if I say Vogue or Cosmopolitan, what I refer to. So these things like geographical items and these things marked with unique names are usually a matter of debate, which I have with my students. They usually ask, you can have a certain different replicas, or for example, if you're traveling abroad, you go to a souvenir shop, you'll have some keychains or postcards, some brochures, which are, with the representation of these unique or either geographical items. And why is it considered to be a proper noun? Well, it is a replica of a unique item or a geographical item which exists on the planet. I recently Googled a bit about the Eiffel Tower, and I found out that there are somewhere between 15 and 20 different replicas, almost in the exact size, or bigger or a bit smaller, throughout the entire world. Majority of these replicas have their own name, because there's also something which is called the protection of author rights. So they are mostly also tweaked a bit, but they are replicas of one and only the Eiffel Tower, which exists in Paris. All the names of publications, different brands, phone models, car models, everything is in that group. Second group of the nouns that we're going to talk about are the common nouns. Why are they called common nouns? Because they are used to mark and represent a group of certain objects which have a similar or same purpose or usage. If we say a chair, none of us have completely the same model, in the same size, in the same color, but no, we have, different designs, different colors, different models, but the purpose of that chair is that it is used for sitting. all the objects which have that same or similar purpose are grouped in this group of common nouns. Now, the common nouns are further divided into two subgroups. One of those subgroups are so-called countable nouns. The other ones are uncountable nouns. Now, don't let the name itself trick you. Numerical state or status of both of those groups of nouns can be presented, but the difference is in the way how we do it. For the countable nouns, the point is that we can present the countability or the numerical state of those nouns per individual unit. So those are the nouns which can have a whole number, whole natural number put in front of them. And therefore, those nouns are the only ones that can have change in English language. Basically, nouns are not changed throughout different genders or throughout different case systems, as it is the case in some languages. In English, you don't have those changes. The only change that a noun can take in English is the plural of nouns. And countable nouns are specifically those. Uncountable nouns are those whose numerical state, by their own nature, cannot be presented by an individual unit. We have to present them by a certain quantity. And for that quantity, we actually use the countable noun. Now, the best example for those two can actually be presented in groceries or ingredients or whatever you can, for example, go and buy. For countable nouns, the best examples would be, for example, a car, because you can go and buy one car, or if your financial state allows more than one. Or let's just take it, we're going to the grocery store. Can we go and buy one apple? Yes, of course we can. So an apple would be a countable noun. But for uncountable noun, the most general example would be, for example, milk. Can you go and buy one milk? Well, it's a bit tricky question. Why? Because there are different kinds of packages in which milk is sold. For example, in my country, you can get a milk which is 0.25 liters, half a liter, liter and a half, liter 0.4. You don't have those huge mugs of gallons. But unless we use a countable noun to actually describe the quantity of that milk, we don't have any information about its numerical state, except that it's just the nature of the noun and that, it is an item called milk. Subdivision of uncountable nouns is the following. Those nouns are classified in 3 different categories. The first category would be abstract or, as I like to call them, untouchable nouns. Why? Because in order to actually figure out if a noun is abstract or not, the best possible question to ask yourself is if I can touch it. If I can touch it, then it goes into some other classifications. Then it's either a proper noun or a common noun, but when we're talking about common, countable, or uncountable. So it cannot be the abstract noun. Why? Because the point of the abstract nouns is that they exist only in the range of our thoughts. So we have a mental image according to a certain description or classification what it should represent, but they don't have the physical shape. They don't have the physical form. So if you're not sure, just a question, can I touch it? If I can, then it's not the abstract noun. If I cannot, then yeah, it might be. The best examples of these nouns would be nouns, for example, referring to certain feelings, or, for example, bodily status, like hunger or thirst. For example, when someone is hungry, His stomach produces some sounds. Other person might feel faint. Third person might have issues, for example, with blood sugar. But, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that all of us know when these symptoms appear. Now I'm in the state of hunger, so now I'm hungry. But can we touch hunger? No, we cannot. The same goes with thirst. The same goes, for example, with love, with hatred, health, education. Health and education are also nouns which usually spark a bit of a debate. Because people say, you go to a doctor for a checkup, and then the doctor checks your internal state of organs or whatever, does the blood test. Then you know that you are either healthy or not healthy. But I say, yeah, but can you put health itself in front of you and touch it? No, you cannot. The same thing about education. So if we can touch it, then it's not an abstract noun. If we cannot touch it, then it, in 99% of the cases, is. Second group of uncountable nouns are collective nouns. As the name itself says, they represent a certain collection or a collective of someone or something. Those are the nouns which don't have numerically definite multitude. They basically represent numerically indefinite multitude. If they were defined or definite, then they would be in the category of countable nouns. For example, if we say the police went to the streets of the city to deal with the demonstrators, do we know how many of the people from the police forces have been sent to the streets? No, we just know that, at least more than one representative has been sent to the streets, but we don't have a definite number. If we would say that many policemen or police women or police officers were sent into the streets, then we would have a countable noun. It would no longer be uncountable because it would be very clearly defined by a certain whole number as a separate unit. The noun which causes also debate here in this group of nouns is the noun team. Now that one is a bit tricky because it can be assigned countability. It can become a countable noun in a certain situation. It is in general an uncountable noun. Why? Because a team represents a group of a minimum of 2 people or more. So if I say my business team made a huge success at this, business meeting, that in that case, my business team is not numerically determined. It can be from 2 to 2002 people, to an indefinite number of people who are within my team. The only thing where we can actually see this noun as a countable noun is if we have in advance very determined number of people who are a part of the team. That shows best when we're talking about sports. Sports teams are very limited in the amount of players or in the amount of participants in a certain team when we're talking about a certain sport. So that is when we can actually consider one team to be one separate unit. And that's when you could have a situation to see in news or to hear in the news. Tonight, the 2 of our best football teams will be matching their forces in the game of a lifetime, for example. In that case, we could have 2 teams. We could have that noun counted as a countable noun and put in either singular or plural form. The third group, the third subdivision of the uncountable nouns are the nouns which are called mass nouns. Now, those nouns present or represent either a materia in itself or used as a material for something. The biggest amount of any crafting, building, and cooking materials or ingredients actually goes into this category. And the nouns which are usually represented, basically representatives of this category, usually have the either liquid, powdery, or grainy state. So when we're talking about the liquid substances, for example, water, wine, beer, vinegar, oil, both as a cooking oil or as a gas, then, for example, for powdery ones, flour, sand, gravel, sugar, pepper, ground pepper, salt. For example, the solid ones, you could have different kinds of metal, which are put into the category. For example, like iron, aluminum, copper, or wood as a building material. Not wood, not as a separate trunk. That would be a tree. But if you say wood, then you use it as a building material in general. So those would actually be the best representatives of the mass nouns as a part of uncountable nouns. So when we're talking about the nouns, the first division is into proper and common nouns. Next subdivision is that the common nouns are divided into countable and uncountable nouns. And after that, uncountable nouns are divided into abstract, collective, and mass nouns. And that is basically all you need to know when it's about learning primarily, and using the nouns in English language. Now, we mentioned a bit earlier that the only change which can happen to the nouns is the one that can happen to common countable nouns, and that is the plural of nouns. Now, the plural of nouns in English exists in two main forms. That is regular plural and irregular plural, like basically every grammatical thing in English language. The bonus is that irregularities are very scarce and that they don't exist in huge numbers, so it's actually easy to compare them either to the other languages or to just acquire them as they are, because there are logical explanations why they're like that. So when we're talking about the plural of countable nouns, the regular plural, it is formed by adding the suffix s in majority of the cases at the end of the word. Now, in some of the cases, due to writing or pronunciation conditions, we add the variant of that s suffix, and it is the form of es. And since it is a smaller amount of cases, lesser amount of cases, we will just basically point out those situations, because in all of the others you just add es at the end of the noun. So if a noun ends in s, like bus, double s, like kiss, sh, wish, ch, like a church, and x, for example, like box, we add es, and that es is pronounced as is. So bus, buses, kiss, kisses, wish, wishes, watch, watches, or church, churches, and box, boxes. The other situation is, problematic situation, is when a noun ends in o. In majority of the cases, when a noun ends in o, we add the suffix es, and that entire oes construction at the end of the word is mostly pronounced as o's. For example, potato, potatoes, tomato. Now, Brits say tomatoes, and the Americans say tomatoes. Hero, heroes. Volcano, volcanoes. In a situation where a word is taken directly in the form from Greek language, there are some exceptions. And with those exceptions, we add only add only s to the word ending in O. For example, some of those words would be photo, radio, or piano. So to these words, we will not be ending, they will not be ending in es, they will be ending in only s. Photo, s. Piano, s, pianos. Radio, radios. Next thing that we need to pay attention to is the so-called Y rule. That's how my students decided to call it, because it basically revolves around the letter Y, and they are usually a bit frustrated with it, so they are, asking themselves why that rule even exists. With the letter Y, we have two different situations. If a noun ends in a vowel, which is A, E, I, O, U, and Y at the end. So if a word in writing ends in any of these combinations, then we just add S at the end of the noun for making the plural form. For example, toy, toys, key, keys. But when the noun ends in a consonant plus Y, so basically any other non-vowel letter plus Y, then the situation called change of Y to I takes place. So in that situation, we transform Y into the letter I, because those are the two letters from the English alphabet that can be pronounced in the same way, and we add the suffix es. So all of the words that have a combination of consonant plus Y that we need to make plural will in plural form end in consonant IES. For example, baby, babies, BAB, IES. Factory, factories. Family, families, according to the same rule. And the last rule, when we're talking about the plural of nouns, is so-called F rule. Good guess. My students called it the F rule. And that one is also pretty irritating for them. But, when you decide to make things a bit fun, and funny, then I guess it is easier to actually learn and acquire. So let's take a look into the F rule. When nouns end in F or FE, but of course that E at the end of the word being a silent E, the one that we don't pronounce, for example, like wife. So we basically write an E at the end, but we don't pronounce it. The last sound that we hear is F. Those words, in majority of the cases, basically in vast majority of the cases, have a change of F into V, and then we add ES. For example, shelf, shelves, scarf, scarves, wife, wives. At some situations, actually in some cases, when the words end in a long vowel plus F. And what does that mean? Those are usually the endings which are IEF, ARF, and double OF. For example, like the word chief, or the word roof, or dwarf, those from Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. As I just said, the plural is formed by adding only S at the end. For example, roof, roofs, dwarf, dwarfs, chief, chiefs. And that is all that needs to be said about the regular plural. So, majority of the nouns add only S. There are certain situations where we have to pay attention to if we are to add ES, and those are if the noun ends in S, SS, SH, CH, and X. Then if a noun ends in O with a special emphasis on those nouns from Greek language. Then we have the Y rule, vowel plus Y. We add only S, consonant plus Y turns or transforms into I, and we add ES. And the words ending in F, well, the F rule, F or FE, majority of the cases, F changes into V and we add ES. And in slight number of the cases, in small number of situations where nouns end in long vowel plus F, like OOF, ARF, IEF, we add only S at the end of the word. So, regular plural, check. Now, when we're talking about irregular plural, those are mostly the remnants of other cultures and languages' influences on English language. I don't know if you knew the information that English belongs to Germanic group of languages, but on the other hand, English actually has around 48 to 50% of the words imported directly from French. So French is a very, very Roman language, and it is basically one of the main representatives of Roman languages. That's why I usually like to call English a bipolar language. But if we put that aside, there are a lot of the influences from different cultures and languages, especially in the old periods of development of the English language as we know it today. So when we're talking about irregular plurals, first situation that we come across is that we form plural by changing the main vowel in the word. So we have there some three cases which are most common. That is changing the vowel A to a vowel E, as in the words, for example, man and woman, into men and women. Then we have a situation where we change double O into double E, like in the words foot or goose or tooth into feet, geese, teeth. And the last situation would be when we change a group OU to the vowel E. For example, actually to the vowel I. For example, in the words mouse and louse into mice and lice. So that is the first group where we change the base vowel. The second group is very usually made by adding the suffix en, n, or ren, ren. Like in the words ox, oxen, or in the word, for example, child, children. The third group of irregular plural formations would be the nouns which have the same form for both singular and plural. The most famous nouns from that group are fish, salmon, and trout, like two breeds or species of fish. Then the noun sheep and the noun deer. So we will be using the same form of the noun for both plural and singular. And how do we make it happen? Well, for the singular, for expressing singular, we will either be using an indefinite article or number one. And for plural, we will be using either the definite article the or some number which is bigger than one. Simple. For example, I had a fish for lunch, or I had one fish for lunch, and I ate the fish for lunch, or for example, I ate two fish for lunch. Now, I was recently shown a reel on Instagram where Joe Rogan was actually corrected by Mr. Neil, and since I'm horrible with the names, I can never remember actually his last name, but I will tag it. where he asked, Mr. Neil was talking about some fish, and he said fishes. And Joe Rogan asked him, isn't it a fish? And the explanation is, fishes is also correct. But in a situation where when we are talking about different species of fish, for example, if you have a pond and you have salmon, trout, cods, or catfish, all together in the same pond, you will be talking about fishes because you are referring to different species of fish. That is the situation where you can actually see that noun as a countable noun, as much as, if you recall, when I mentioned the word team, where it can actually be assigned the attribute of countability, of being countable. That would be the situation here as well. Or, for example, for sheep, because you don't have only one breed of sheep existing on the planet. There are, various different ones. So if you would, for example, be talking about your herd of sheep, and then you would have, several different species in it, you could classify it as sheeps, meaning one, for each of those species. And the fourth group of irregular plural formation in English language is actually the Latin, or sometimes referred to as Greek plural, but mostly it's Latin plural. This plural comprises the words from imported into English from Latin and Greek, and those words keep the formation of the plural as it is done in Latin and Greek. So basically they keep the same suffixes, the same type of plural forms. For example, the words analysis, crisis, in singular they end in is. In plural they will end in es. So e comes instead of I. But the help in differentiating and actually pronouncing those words in plural in English is that those plural forms always have the stress, always have the accent on the last syllable, on the last part, pronounceable part of the word. So the singular would be crisis, the plural would be crises, analysis, analyses. Then, for example, an example from Greek, criterion. So the word ending in on, criterion. The plural would be ending in a, criteria. And for example, the word which is also pretty much often debatable in my lessons is the word media. Is it a singular or plural? Well, the word media is plural of the word medium, and that is the Latin plural. Now, when we say, the word medium, we usually have, we have that mental picture of people in trance, trying to talk to ghosts, spirits, and the world from the other side. And, basically, what is media? When we say media, we use it for all of the different networks and means of distributing information, whether it's written or digital. But when we take a look at what media is, well, they are basically the distributor of the information, which goes from those who produce information to those who are supposed to receive. So basically media, they do the same job. Just, the receiving part and the end part might be a bit different. There is, again, possibility to use the word medias in the same context as we would be using fishes or sheeps, as I just explained a bit earlier in the video. So when we would be talking about different kinds of media, altogether, then we could actually take a look at each and every separate type of media as one unity, and then we could actually talk about it in the plural form, like medias. That is everything that needs to be said about the plural of nouns. I hope, honestly, that all of you who are in the need of information and explanations like these will find it useful. And also, if you are just plain nerds about languages, like I am, if you're just lingomaniacs and want and like to expand your knowledge in languages and structures, I hope all of you enjoyed, and you're more than welcome to join me in the next piece of content.